This series is brought to you by the Heritage Office of Kilkenny County Council. Hurling and Us. Kilkenny Voices from the GAA Oral History Archive. Episode 2, Journeys. For more than a century, from near and far, people have journeyed to hurling matches. Local derbies, school games, tournaments, county finals, and big days out in Croke Park. Despite the limitations of means or conditions, people have overcome all sorts of obstacles to support their team and to see their heroes in action. The GAA Oral History Collection contains hundreds of accounts of epic and not so epic journeys. Tales of crossing the landscape on trains and buses, airplanes and boats, horses and carts, lorries, on foot, and of course, by bicycle.
It was on your bike everywhere at that time.
At that time, the roads were actually black with people cycling, you know.
And I remember going to the matches in Nolan Park.
4 or 5 of us and set off of a Sunday morning, a nice summer Sunday morning, we'd all set off on the bikes.
And under the bridge, there was a man from St. Kenneth's minding the bicycles there for tuppence.
We cycled to Carlow for the first round of the Leinster Football Championship, and then the following Sunday we cycled to Athy to see Laois and Carlow.
We went to Ross to matches on our bikes. We went to Dungarvan on bikes to matches. We went into the sports field practically every Sunday.
Leaving the bikes into the pub, have a drink or two and eat the sandwiches and on to the park and the matching.
And you got your bicycle left there, no one bothered to take it or take the pump off of it or anything else.
It used to be lovely coming down Finner Hill. Straight down, you wouldn't have to pedal or anything. It runs straight down into Turlingford and into Carry Marshall's there, the pub there. They'd be all in there, them fellas passing in bikes and passes. And to be late when you get home. Yeah. Be up again the next morning for work and that'll be it, no problem.
So that's how you operated.
The minors, we were on the coattails of the seniors in 75.
John Henderson, Johnstown.
But you were actually at the party because you were on the minors, and you got home on the train, and the whole carry-on in the train and the whole buzz on the train coming back after that all Ireland. And they used to put down these fog signals on the tracks as you came in. So once the train hit them, they ignited them like firecrackers. And you hear this as you're coming in. Like you know, you knew you were home, and it was, you know, amazing. And the difference now is they have open top buses. We got onto a Smithwick's lorry. When the minors were involved, they had to have 2. So you were sent out first to the crowd, the minor thing and the cup, and Harry Ryan was the captain, and our captain, of course, we were all hanging on. We all thought we were the bee's knees. And then the seniors would follow on, and like we all thought they were there to see us, but they were there to see the guys behind, but it didn't matter anyway.
Dan McAvoy, St. John's Parish, Kilkenny City. And so what would the routine be, so in those days where you'd be going to?
There was an excursion from Kilkenny, and one of the excursions went through Ballyragget, Atana, Abbeyleix, Portlaoise, and then maybe up in Abbeyleix the train would have to stop and fill up. There was rigs of turf at either side of the track, and they'd have to get down and throw the turf up onto the tender, because the turf would last no length, you know, and there was no coal, and you could be 5 hours on the blooming line going up, you know. Oh, Lord, and then the second train would go on through Bagnallstown and through Carlow. They were always great to get in Bagnallstown.
And would the atmosphere have been good on the train going up along?
Oh, it's a great crack, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Sean Doherty, Galmoy.
One of the really, really enjoyable parts of my hurling career was going to Dublin. We used to travel on the train all the time, you know. The crowds from Galmoy, this time now, at that time in the 80s, the crowds that used to go then to Ballybrophy, and it became the thing to do. And the ones who had been travelling before that by car, they came back and went by train. And we take over a whole carriage on the way up, and we'd go into a hotel above in Dublin, the whole gang in again, like, you know, and same thing into the pub. We went, Hennessy's had a pub, Galmaple had a pub up in Dublin. We'd went there into that pub. Oh, sure, to go to Dublin, the car, you have to get it serviced and everything before you go. And even at that, we're really sure to break down. But we'd be coming home from the matches in Dublin, and the traffic jams, and all the cars along the main road, they'd be all biling up because you'd be queuing and driving real slow. Cars weren't able for that, you know. That's the way it was.
Martin Mulhall, Bonnetstown.
But I had another story, I think, about the 1950 game in the All-Ireland, playing Tipperary. The forwards went up in this little baby Austin car, a little Austin 7. And at that time, every tube was patched, and during the warm weather, the patches would rise, and you'd have to get out and get it mended somewhere. But we got up to Inchicore all right, parked the car there. We went to the match, and I think it was only a shilling or something, or a £0.50 to get into the sideline that time. And we came back then, and we set out for home after losing to Tipperary by 1 point. We were devastated coming home. But worst of all was we had to get out every 4 miles of the road on the way back to Kilkenny to pump the wheel again up another bit. There was a slow puncture on it. The patches were rising, and we went home at 4 o'clock in the morning. And that was our story for 1950.
Paddy Buggy, Slieve Rue.
I'll tell you a story. Do you know how I used to get to the meetings, the Leinster Council meetings? Bob was chairman, he lived in Knockmilon. And I was working in New Rath, just on the outskirts as you leave Waterford, with Kilkenny County Council. And I'd come out there at 4:30 in the evening, out on the road, thumb a lift to Knockmilon, and Bob would bring me to Kilkenny to Paddy Grace, and Paddy Grace would bring us to the meetings. Bob would bring me back to Knockmilon. Now, Knockmilon is at least 10 miles from where I'm living now. And he'd leave me out of the car at the bridge at Knockmilon. I still had 10 miles to go in the small hours of the night. But there were 2 acid trucks hauling to a factory here in New Ross. And one of the drivers was a Michael Welsh. But he in particular, or the other driver, would pick me up and they'd bring me here. It's unbelievable, but it's the truth.
John Henderson, Johnstown.
From 1978 to 1991, I drove from Bray to Kilkenny to train, to play matches. There was never a Sunday or a week that I wasn't coming up and down. I started off in a Fiat 127, and then I progressed to a Fiat 128, and then I got up in the world a bit, and I got a Fiat Ritmo, and then I got a Golf van, then I got a... So it's amazing, and I can count the number of cars that I was in and used and abused as I drove up and down the country.
Dan McAvoy, St John's Parish, Kilkenny City. You must have seen a lot of changes in your lifetime of the way people travel to matches.
Sure. I'll tell you, Billy Malloy, he had a top bakery here in town. There was Malloy's and Crotty's, but Billy Malloy, that time, all the bread used to be delivered by horse and car that time around. He had these 2 trotting ponies. One of them he christened Hitler and the other Mussolini. But I mean, that time he drove to Thurles, you know, just gave an idea and brought a crowd of the staff in and the family in the trap and the trotting pony. But and came back again, and a pony and trap, you know. But the creamy manager, Jimmy O'Brien, he was a Cork man. But he gave the creamery lorry to the staff, and he was driving the lorry himself. And they had to stop then to obey the law out in Littleton. And fill turf, you see, that was permitted. You see, you were going to Littleton for a load of turf. That covered
the trip.
It did, yeah.
Pat Delaney, Clementa.
Yeah, go on the bus maybe about 8:30. 8:30, 9 o'clock, after 8 o'clock mass, you go to Massinggreen, 8 o'clock Massinggreen. Came down then, you got the bus. You went up to Dublin then. You arrived in Dublin, like no stop. You possibly maybe stopped in Kilkenny to take a few along the way. And you had the lunch in Dublin then and back again. Where we used to always go was, there was a little restaurant there opposite the Garden of Remembrance on the corner. They had lovely roast chicken and mash and peas. You'd walk off up to Croke Park then, like. And you'd always then wait for the 1 or 2 stragglers every year. The bus driver, like, you'd be always threatening, like, to leave them behind, but they'd be fairly well oiled coming back in the bus and they'd be very funny.
Seamus Delaney, St Patrick's Parish, Kilkenny City.
We were the first bus to park at Clonliff College, and we got into the Bishop, and there was a TD, the name is Sean Wells from Kilkenny, I think, Paul TD in Dublin, and he got onto the Bishop. We got into Clonliff College, but bring a bag of spuds or something for the man in the lodge. And we were the only bus going in there for a long time, and the next thing we were changed, we had a different bus driver, and the other driver that used to come with us with Hares brought a different crowd, and gradually they started to let in buses. Right. Next thing it was open to the used only priests from the country park up there on Sunday, you know, and that's how Clonliff now they don't let buses into it anymore.
Some journeys were longer than others, and in times of recession in Ireland, young people left in their droves to build a new life elsewhere. Tommy Walsh from John Mitchell's GAA club in Liverpool talks about welcoming new immigrants to the city in the 1950s.
I don't suppose any Irishman ever came into the city and asked anyone else about a job or digs other than another Irishman. They would seek Irish people. And we didn't know it at the time. Community care wasn't an expression we used, but we now know, looking back, that the GAA clubs were Irish community care organisations, you know, sort of thing, because somebody came in and he wanted a game of football, yes, but he had to have a job and digs as well. And I can remember on a Sunday afternoon people coming out to the game and, you know, as they were tugging out, it was, where is the start? And somebody would say, so-and-so is taking on jobs, be it, you know, Islington Square tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock, I'll get you a start. And any digs. And yeah, there's a room in my place, you know, come back with me. You know, sort of, I would say that the GAA probably was the greatest source of community care in those days. It was far, far more than just a Gaelic football or hurling thing.
From Conaghy, Nicky Brennan talks about a newer generation of Irish immigrants to further flung places.
I mean, probably one of the most amazing events that I attended was the Asian GAA finals in Penang in Malaysia. Now, I mean, I remember going in from the airport that day in a clapped out taxi and watching the flagpoles along the way with photographs of GAA players and Irish flags on it. And here was thousands and thousands of miles away from Ireland. I just said, you know, Davin and Cusack, I said, what would they say if they were just driving in this taxi with me here today?
Special thanks to our interviewees and their families. Featured in this episode were Paddy Buggy, Nicky Brennan, Jim Cantwell, Pat Delaney, Seamus Delaney, Sean Doherty, John Henderson, Dan McAvoy, Martin Mulhall and Tommy Walsh. Our thanks to the GAA Museum and Archive at Croke Park for permission to share excerpts from the collection, which is available in full at gaa.ie. This episode was produced by Conor Sweetman and Regina Fitzpatrick and narrated by Regina Fitzpatrick. This series is brought to you by the Heritage Office at Kilkenny County Council.